All right, so welcome everybody. And we'll begin with our meditation, and the others can join as they like, or if you're listening to the recording, then welcome to the recording. And you can start by relaxing your body. So we'll begin with 20 or 25 minutes of sitting in a meditation that's very much in the theme of the current astrology, so we can explore that from the inside out. So if you'd like, you close your eyes, otherwise just gaze down. And feel the base of the body, whatever you're supported on. Become aware of your physical shape, the sense of the body in space, the sense of the body in the space around you. Bring your awareness to the back. Really let yourself rest in the back body. It's almost like there's a magnetic attraction backwards when you bring your energy and your attention there. And you might even notice that it brings you into a balance that you didn't realize that you were out of, that you can suddenly feel your body more stable, more strong. Become aware of the crown of the head. Sense that there's an energy above the head. So it's well beyond the scalp, well beyond the limits of your body. And without really making a big effort, just see if the body can reach upwards into that energy. Let yourself be drawn up into it. And at the same time, the base of the body is stable, feeling yourself connected to the earth, to whatever you're resting on. And just very subtly, with each breath, start to create more space between the base of the body and the top of the head. And so don't try and struggle to figure out a particular way of doing that. Just let the body figure it out. And you'll notice that the spine feels more relaxed as you do that, more space between each vertebrae, and more space in the neck, perhaps even a feeling of space in the head itself, the base of the skull or the jaw. And become aware of the insides as well, the throat, the heart, the stomach, the abdomen, and the intestines. Soften all of that from the tip of your tongue all the way down through the digestive tract. Soften deep inside. Gently bring your hands together in front of the heart. Feel the heart beating. Stay aware of your breath. Notice that the body is changing shape. with each breath, every time a unique shape. Om Shri Ganapataye Namaha. Om Shri Saraswataye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we each be protected. May what we do here be mutually beneficial, mutually uplifting. Let there not be any obstacles or discord on our path. And may what we do bring peace and harmony to those around us. Let your hands relax onto your legs, palms up or down as you like. Continue to follow your breath, being aware of the shape of the body. Bring your awareness deeper into the heart, what's called the cave of the heart. So it's not just the physical heart, but it's the whole region of the heart. And go deep inside. Starting to have this sensation of compassion and love for yourself. Connecting yourself to that energy of love. It's a naturally, spontaneously arising love. It's not love because it's not conditional on behavior or appearance. It's just love. And let that arise in your heart. Feel that expanding the heart, expanding the energy around the heart, down into the arms, the hands, towards the stomach, perhaps even to the back, feeling the spine tingling, receiving this energy, this vibration of pure love, just because we're plugging into this love that is the energy of the universe, whatever that is that's keeping my heart beating, that keeps your heart beating as well. And we're just receiving with a quiet, perhaps even unspoken thank you, feeling grateful, feeling this expanding love. Allow this love to connect to people around you, imagining close loved ones, beings of all kinds that you care deeply for, and let your love expand, embracing them as well. Continue to expand that capacity for love If you'd like, you can think of it as metta, loving kindness, just wishing well. Now extending that to people who you know, but perhaps not so well. Just reaching out from your heart that's beating from the same power that's beating the hearts of all of those beings. If your mind drifts into thinking, come directly back to the heart and feel yourself welling up once again with that love, this loving kindness. Fill yourself up before you extend it away from you towards what seem to be separate beings. Just expanding that love, touching the hearts of all sentient beings. Reaching out to people you'll never meet, people you don't know. Just expanding from the heart, embracing all of them. And we reach across to those who may have hurt us in the past, or we've had disagreements with, or even historical difficulties with. And just notice in that moment, is there a little pinch? Is there just a little slowing down of this capacity to expand love? So we return to the heart, cultivating loving kindness, compassion, understanding. Expand it even to those we don't like, don't understand, who have wronged us or hurt us in the past. Keep the energy of the heart flowing and notice where there might be a wall, where there might be a break on your capacity to expand in this love. And at this point, we can turn our gaze back inside, this time using the contemplative mind and examining what is that aspect of me that prevents me from love, prevents me from reaching out in kindness, that blocks me from loving others. This is the shadow. And just notice. Is it a need for revenge, a need to be right, a need to be seen, a need to be considered? The reasons are endless. To see what comes up for you when you practice extending love in all directions. Where do you bump up against something that is not yet okay for you to love? And you don't even have to heal that, no need. Just notice it. It's there. If indeed it's there. Maybe there's nothing. Maybe it's already resolved. And once you've understood perhaps even a small element of that shadow of the self, come back to the heart and notice the condition of the heart, the cave of the heart. What does it feel like? Did it become a little bit harder, tighter, more constricted? How is the breathing? Let go of the thinking. Let go of the observations around shadow or any other challenging emotions. Focus now entirely on the breath and on softening the heart. Let the heart receive each time you inhale. As you soften the heart, allow the energy of love to expand. Let it fill you up across the chest and perhaps down the arms, perhaps down into the abdomen, across the back. Expand this feeling, this awareness of love. Just let it reach out and practice embracing all sentient beings without judgment. Just reaching out, reaching out. Don't examine what stops it, if there's anything. Just leave that for now. Focus on the heart and expand the energy from there, embracing all sentient beings without judgment. The moon represents our memory, our emotions, the mind itself. It's our link to the past, our family, our personal past, our ancestral past. Today's full moon, it's already in Leo, not exact until tomorrow evening. But in these 2 days of this Leo moon, you can start to experience the energy of the heart, symbolized by Leo, generosity, expansiveness, demonstrative love, a capacity to be in joy, living through joy, self-expression. And what blocks that is this energy of the heart. And that blockage is coming from our unregulated emotions, our memories, and from the mind. And when that's blocked, then the more challenging aspects of Leo emerge. Selfishness, a desire to be seen above all others, an egoic nature, a very strong sense of separateness or superiority. We're always working on the scale between that aspect of Leo and the selfless aspect of radiating love and joy. The only way to regulate that is in the heart itself. This is the organ ruled by Leo, experienced as the moon in us, expressed through the sound of our voice, through our being, our nature, in the self-expression that is also the realm of Leo. Feel this connection between the heart and the throat, right at the base of the throat. This is where the moon resides in the physical body. Sensing the space between the brows, just above the palate of the mouth, deep in the center of the head. And this is where the sun resides in the body. Consciousness, awareness of self, pure awareness. Om Som Somaya Namaha. Salutations to the nectar of the moon in the form of Soma. The radiant energy that comes from the moon, that's receiving the light of the sun and reflecting it back out. Om Chan Chandraya Namaha. Salutations to the moon itself as Lord Chandra, the moon that we can see in the sky, that we can call upon to understand the changing tides and seasons, the passage of time. Om Suryaya Namaha. Salutations to the sun in the form of Lord Surya, the blazing sun that crosses the sky. Om Ritaya Namaha. Salutations to the heart, Prit. Hridaya is the center of the heart, the cave of the heart. Bring your hands there now. Join the hands together in front of the heart. Feel your heart beating again. Sense of presence, of pure awareness in your body. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That is perfect. This is perfect. When you remove perfection from perfection, perfection remains. Begin to rub the hands together, create some heat in your palms. And lightly cover your eyes with your palms. Blinking inside the hands, get used to the light. And when you're ready, then lower the hands. So welcome to those who've joined us in the meantime. I'm going to share my screen. I hope you can see that. If you can't, you can unmute yourself and let me know. And if you have questions, you can also unmute yourself. And otherwise, we'll save them for the end because I won't be reading the chat as I do this. So as you can see, I'm sure on the screen, you'll see the Leo full moon. And with the Leo full moon, now we're into a very different energy. See if I can just make that bigger, sorry. So we're now into a much more positive energy, although it's still going to be very intense. So what's been happening over the last 3 or 4 years, where we've all been feeling a sense of increasing restriction and increasing pressure, social pressure, pressure from government, pressure from uh, institutions, financial institutions. There is a background of that still. But the difference now is that things are actually moving on, moving ahead. So we're at the stage now, we're at the beginning of this stage of moving ahead. I would say that if you do have a project that you want to launch, this could be a really interesting time to do that. This week, tomorrow, or Thursday in particular would be a really interesting time to do that if it's already ready to go. But at the same time, you might also feel that this is a good time for you to come to these peak realizations of things, because I think we're going to have an enormous amount of understanding between now and the beginning of March. And then you could consider the beginning of March, on the 2nd of March, at the new moon then, as a really good time to then step forward and make things move a little bit. We're already in a phase now since last week where all of the planets are moving forward, which is a really rare thing. Usually if that happens, it happens for a couple of weeks. And this time it's about 3 months, which is really a lovely window of forward moving, constructive energy, which we, again, haven't really had for years, particularly not since December 2020. And or even if we go back to March of 2020, where I'll be talking about that in a moment. And so we're really, I think this is a really nice change of energy. I'll explain a little bit about that ongoing intensity, but I think at least on an individual level, this can be really, really great energy. Collectively, often these kinds of energies can be a little challenging. Potentially also more than a little challenging, even a bit explosive. And so I'll show you why after I describe the energy of this full moon. So just so you're aware, when we have a full moon, there's an opposition. So there's already a tension, but it happens every month. And so we're quite used to that cycle. Often people can't sleep at the full moon because of that heightened energy that's coming from the luminosity of the moon that changes the dynamics on Earth. It's when plants grow the most. It's when the phytoactive components of plants are usually at their height. Of course, it changes the sea level, changes the tides. And so it's not insignificant, and we have to assume that that also has an impact on us. And so if you're one of those people that doesn't sleep well at the full moon, this is certainly why. It's not entirely in your head. And so this opposition is when the moon is in Leo. In this time of the year, the moon is in Leo. And the sun is over on the other side of the chart in Aquarius. So the sun is in late degrees of Aquarius. So for the purposes of our reading tonight, I want you to just ignore these other points. I might touch on them later, but don't worry about them. And don't even worry about the ascendant, although it's very interesting purely from the point of view of where I am in Brussels, because this chart is set for Brussels, that the moon is actually on the ascendant. And I know that in most of Northern Europe, the moon is in fact on the ascendant, wherever you set the chart. If you set it for Amsterdam or Paris or London or whatever, it's going to be either above or below the ascendant at some point around the ascendant within a degree or two, which is quite interesting if you want to set up something specific to your location. That's moon on the ascendant can be very, very interesting for doing things with the general public, for example. So that's 24 hours from now, basically. It's tomorrow evening at almost 6 p.m. And so the moon is, it symbolizes our connection with people, how we can relate with people. And when it's on the ascendant, it's very strong. So it's a good thing if you do want to make a presentation or you want to highlight something tomorrow or even Thursday, could be a really good day for that. when the moon is in Leo, as I mentioned during the meditation, the moon in Leo is going to have a lot to do with our emotional nature around ourself, the way that we see things, our individual. I don't want to say selfish nature, that could be one aspect of it, but let's say our self-aware nature or awareness of self is very heightened and very connected to our emotions. And so there can be this energy individually in your life. You might be experiencing that individually, where either you or people around you seem to be operating from a more limited perspective of what they want to see in the world, or what they are trying to achieve, that might be more to do with what they're feeling about themselves or what they want, rather than what might be better for the general situation. Sometimes we make decisions that are good for ourselves individually, but they're not good for the greater public. If I think of things like conveniences that end up being extremely bad for the environment, as just one example. Um, like these dreadful pods, coffee pods, that we somehow managed for hundreds of years to make coffee without them. And suddenly, sort of 15 years ago, everybody had to have coffee pods. And now we have just tons and tons and tons of wastes, not to mention the environmental damage caused by the mining. So if we use that as an example, it's because my personal preference is to have my individual serving of coffee as quickly and conveniently as possible, and I won't think about the consequences of that. So this is one way of looking at that Leo moon, and this is certainly something that we can reflect on also because Pluto is very close to Venus and Mars, which I'll talk about shortly. So we're looking a lot at shadow energy this evening. So let's cross over and see the sun now. The sun is in Aquarius, where it's been for the last already 3 weeks. And the sun in Aquarius is really shining a light on what we're focused on as a collective energy. It's where we connect with people. It's innovation. It's something moving forward. It's our hopes and ambitions and our dreams. And for example, wherever you have Aquarius in your chart, it's going to reflect that desire for more of a greater benefit to all, or a sense of wanting things to be fair and socially consequential. Wherever Leo is in the chart, you're personally involved. So there's something more of you involved in that, your self-expression, your action, what it is that you need to do is going to be very important in that house, because you are represented by the sun, that consciousness aspect of the sun, the awareness of self, the self-expression that is Leo. So now those two are in opposition. And so this is not a new theme. It's just a new flavor of the same theme that we've been seeing quite significantly, especially since December 2020, when Saturn and Jupiter both entered into Aquarius. And that has really given a lot of flavor of Aquarius. And so now we're just in this energy again more intensively. And it's really showing up, I think, quite strongly this week. It has been building up since the Aquarius new moon of the beginning of the month on the 1st of February, where there's now quite a strong sense of what the people want. And remember earlier I said the moon represents the people in a chart, like a horary chart or a mundane chart, not in a birth chart, although we can also see that connection between you and people around you, the public, let's say. But in a neutral chart, like what we're looking at right now, the moon is all about the people, the populace, the general public. And so there's been an enormous amount of activity around the people, and how that has triggered a desire for something different to show up in society. And it's now spreading out. So Aquarius also rules networks, and it rules connections with like-minded individuals and with groups of people who share the same kinds of goals, political or social or economic goals. That is typical Aquarius energy. And so we're seeing a lot of this coming to a head right now, whether it be the truckers in Canada or all those different organizations that have kind of spewed out from that initiative, which started 2 weeks ago, a little more than 2 weeks ago. Or if it's something to do with much more global issues, like for example the issue around the conflict we're seeing between the United States, essentially, NATO in general, and Russia at the moment in Ukraine. And so we are in this very tense, because opposition, it's showing us the tension. We're in this tense period of time where there is a need to recalibrate what is expected or what is desired between the needs for the individual, the desire for the self to manifest what it wants and what it feels is important, and what is good for the collective. So I want to go back in time. We're going to go back to last August of 2020, as the first point of reflection. So we had the 1st of February, which was the first, the new moon that started this smaller cycle, the smaller lunar cycle, which happened to be the Lunar New Year as well. But if we go back even further, so 6 months back, we're going to go back to August at the new moon that happened in Leo in August. And this is now the culmination point of that situation that was going on in August. And this is actually, it was just, again, this kind of, this tension, same kind of situation, this tension of what do we do? What does the individual want? What is the better thing for the individual? And very much highlighting that in terms of our self-expression, our need to express, our need to be connected to the others. Leo again is this this heartfelt connection, this connection through love and generosity and so on. It's also around leadership. Leo represents leaders. It represents kings and presidents. Anybody who would be considered sort of a top leader in their society is represented by Leo. And so now we're looking from last August at what has also come from leadership. We're seeing that. And then we go back even further in time. And then we're going back to August of 2017. So that feels like a lifetime ago. If you can take yourself back to August of 2017. So we're talking about 4.5 years now. And try to really sense what was going on in your life. There was an eclipse at this particular degree point in August of 2017. So this was the degree point of the what was known in those days as the Great American Eclipse, which went from the west coast of the United States all the way to the east coast and was visible the whole way through. So traditionally, it's considered that if an eclipse is visible in a particular location, it's more powerful in that location. And which makes logical sense, because in the old days, they wouldn't have even known that there was an eclipse unless they could actually see it with the eyes. And until they got mathematically savvy. But even still, now we saw that eclipse moved from Portland, Oregon, all the way to the east coast of North Carolina. And so imagine now what has transformed in just the United States alone from August of 2017 until today. And we're seeing the fruits of that. We're seeing it very, very keenly because it's the same degree point. We're seeing now this week, as you all know, this tension that the United States has been very keen to drum up and focus on, that is between ostensibly NATO and Russia around the issue of Ukraine and Ukraine's borders, and particularly what degree Ukraine is under the NATO umbrella. And so when we look at all of these events that are happening this week, we need to take it back in context over these last 4.5 years And of course, even bigger than that, we need to go back in context to the last time that, in fact, Saturn was in Aquarius. And so when Saturn was in Aquarius, it was the early 1990s. So that would have been 93, 94, and parts of 95. And at that time, this was the period of time when Russia, when the former Soviet Union, of course, had collapsed in 1990, 1991, and then Russia was trying to reestablish itself. The United States essentially put Putin in to govern Russia, a complete puppet of the United States, so already interfering basically in Russian elections. And then the United States also basically dictated the terms of NATO expansion. At the time of the last Saturn return, they had said that they would never expand up to the Russian border. This was the agreement. It was very well understood, especially in Europe, that this would definitely provoke Russia, and that would be something unnecessarily provocative. And so it was not considered until only a very short period of time afterwards, when it was suddenly considered. And so this has been a really thorny issue ever since. This whole Saturn cycle of 28, 29 years has been under the shadow of that betrayal, because it was an agreement, it was negotiated, it was understood that Russia was going to be allowed to have this kind of buffer, at the very least for historical reasons, and that the United States had no expansionist ideas itself. And we've seen very clearly now, this week particularly, what has happened there. So this inability to come to an agreement, an inability to be open and honest about the situation. So this is very intense, as you can even see on the news. But it's important to remember that there's a bigger context, which is often not being shared, not described. And this is going to apply in lots of different areas of life. I've already been saying this for the last 4 years or more, since 2015. In fact, I've been saying this, that we're living in a time where very, very powerfully, we are not able to trust what is being told to us. And so it's always worth holding these things very lightly, that whatever is coming up, we have to assume we don't have all of the information. This may be the case in your own life as well. So notice where in certain areas of your life, there's a tension, there's a pressure, a desire for change in this area between Leo and Aquarius particularly, and where there's somehow not enough information, or not a sense of real security, let's say, in taking a decision. And this is, I think, what's going to change, particularly after this week and moving forward into March, particularly as of the first week of March, where things will shift enormously in terms of the energy and the capacity to actually start to feel, now you can, with more confidence, put one foot in front of the other, rather than doing it as more of a sense of like a zombie kind of going through life. Now we can start to feel, now I'm getting clarity, I can start to make these choices. So there's something else I'd like you to notice about this, and that is that 27-degree point, which I've already mentioned, is it's the same degree point at which we had the Pluto and Saturn conjunction in Capricorn in March of 2020, and triggering all of this pandemic shutdown. That March 23rd, 2020 was when the world basically shut down. And at that time, this is where Saturn and Pluto, and in fact Mars, were also together. So all three of them at 27 degrees of Capricorn. And now look who's there. So now we have Pluto. Pluto is all about transformation, intensification of energy, intensification of understanding the hidden information, hidden and shadow aspects of relationships, in this case, particularly strongly this week. I'll explain that more. But we're really recalling this energy of 27, the 27 and into the 28th degree of the zodiac, which is intense power for change, for endings, for releasing. And that's magnified even more because now when we start to look at the nodes, the North Node has just shifted out of from the 27th backwards into the 26th degree. It's still in the 27th degree, although it's 26 degrees, 57 minutes. So there's 60 what are called arc minutes. It's not a minute like we have on the clock. It's a degree minute. And each degree contains 60 minutes. And so this is almost 27 degrees. And what that does, now we can start to see it here, is it forms a grand cross. Sorry, a grand square. And so this grand square is made up of a square between the North Node and the Sun and the South Node and the Moon, and then the Moon and the North Node. And then by definition, there's also an opposition within a grand square, because that opposition between the Sun and the Moon is like the essential point, let's say, of it. And there's always an opposition between the North and South nodes. So that's not marked here on the chart. It's a given. But why this is important is because when the nodal axis, the North Node and South Node, or what are called Rahu and Ketu, are squaring the Sun and the Moon, or squaring the Sun even on its own, this is a significant time. It's a time often of great conflict in general, in the world, in society, can be personal conflict. That depends where this happens in your chart. It's at the very least going to be tension, psychological tension about what needs to change, what needs to be adjusted, what absolutely must be stopped or be transformed before we can carry on. And this is particularly strong with this degree point. If we look at that numerologically speaking, when you look at numbers through numerology, you reduce the number. So you add the two numbers together. So in this case, 2 and 7, and then you reduce it if there's a reduction. So in this case, 2 and 7 is 9. There's nothing left to reduce. So we've got 9, 27. 2 plus 7 is 9. And so 9 is the number of endings. The cycle ends, the cycle begins at 1, it ends at 9. And so 9 is the ending. So we're seeing a very strong message here. By the way, this is the fifth time that we've had a moon, opposition, Sun, Moon opposition, the full moon, in that 27th degree. And there's 2 more to go. So there's 7 in a row. Which is pretty extraordinary. And so we have this really intense sort of push for endings, and very quickly thereafter. So if I just even go one day ahead, sorry, let's take that away. We just want to have the full moon. So one day ahead. Oh, I do need to have I have to take the transits because it won't let me see the moon. Okay, so if we go one day ahead, we already see that now the Sun is in the 29th degree. It's going the next degree. And so that's we've gone too far ahead, sorry. Oop. Yes, 28th degree. It's gone into the next degree. We need to just change the timing. This does make sense. Hang on for a minute, I'll make it make sense. And that we immediately, when we go from the 27 to 28, we go 27 meaning 9, 28 is 2 plus 8 equals 10, and we reduce that into 1. And so 1 is what? It's the beginning of a new cycle. So we're in this really intense kind of razor's edge of the ending of something and the beginning of something else. And it's deeply symbolic at this time because we know that this has social implications. It has a change that is caused by quite a lot of tension, but that we're breaking out of a mold, we're breaking away from something that we already had we've already experienced. We're done with this now. So we still have these 2 more moons, which we will be experiencing at the 27th degree. And yet it's really going to be a kind of a release. It's going to be a feeling of moving forward from now on, particularly after the first week of March. I think particularly after April, we'll really see a distinct difference, but we're already feeling this breath of fresh air even since the new moon of 1st of February. So this is something both very exciting and also a bit nerve-wracking, because it's very clear that there's so many tensions that have been brewing socially, politically, economically, and of course in our own lives we will have an individual story to tell around those different areas of life. Wherever Aquarius is, wherever Leo is, wherever Capricorn is really, really, really being called on right now. And then, of course, the axis between Taurus and Scorpio, which is where the nodes are. I spoke about that quite a lot in the last couple of sessions. So that cross point, this grand fixed cross, is in the signs of Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Leo. Those are fixed energies. They're known as fixed signs. And that fixed energy doesn't change very easily. It doesn't like change. It's not the nature of fixed energy to want to change. And so there can also be this extra resistance to change. And we need to be aware of that in ourselves around what we might need to change. That, again, if we come back into our shadow, which is this, what I was reflecting on earlier, understanding where we're preventing ourselves from changing or from reaching out in the way that we want to in life, and where it is that we might be just afraid, afraid to change. Maybe it can be something to do with the uncertainty of the situation, or it could be something to do with an element that's missing in terms of what you understand of whatever your situation is. And then, of course, on a social level, there's an enormous amount of fear. There's an enormous amount of resistance to change. We had a lot of resistance to initially, when we first saw this energy at 27 degrees of Capricorn, we saw a lot of resistance around wearing masks, around the idea of a lockdown, around the idea of this pandemic, around potential vaccines and their mandates and so on. Now we're seeing the other side, where there's equal resistance to even letting any of that go, because now many people in the population are extremely worried about all of these things. And so there's this kind of clash of resistances, and that is perhaps the best way to describe a grand fixed square. And so what we're seeing right now this very week is this kind of culmination of it. We're seeing that intensity of it. What's also happening tomorrow at this full moon is that Venus and Mars are conjunct each other. And so whenever something happens at the moment of the full moon, we want to see where everything is and how it lines up with each other. So that tells us a bigger story about what's going on. And we can definitely see that when Venus and Mars are in this rare conjunction, it's their first conjunction, in fact, since last July at the Leo new moon. Not exactly at the moon, but it was around that time, and so therefore also affected that Leo in August of 2020. In this case, 2021. And so we've had now just 7 months basically since that. I think actually the Leo full moon was in July of 2021, and we've had just 7 months now since then for them to connect once again. Now, normally that takes 2 years. And so again, it's a very strange indicator, because we're having a lot of things that are happening in what seem to be deeply significant ways, unusual, rare, significant ways. And so when we have Venus and Mars coming together at the same time as this full moon energy, which is triggering a very significant point in time in our history, particularly our collective history, and where we find Pluto exactly on that spot, now we know that there's something really, really important to pay attention to. So we around this time, we want to pay attention to issues around, obviously, relationships, individual as well as social, male-female dynamics, masculine-feminine dynamics, regardless of gender, sexuality, all those questions. It's just the masculine-feminine dynamic. And that also involves this tension between attraction and action. So Mars is all about action, how to assert itself. Venus is all about attraction, how to bring things to itself. Venus represents beauty as well, harmony. It represents the arts in general. It represents money, our possessions as well. And of course, feminine energy and women in general. And then Mars represents, of course, assertion and action. It can be where things get separated. Venus brings things together, Mars separates them. It's an action that can lead to aggression. Traditionally, historically, especially in the Greek mythology, Venus was also considered to be, and in the Roman mythology, Venus was also a goddess of war. So Venus is not 100% all about sunshine and unicorns. It's also this energy of war. It's the art of war. Mars is the action. It's the warrior. It's the impulse to war. It's the aggressive nature. So Venus coming together with Mars anyway creates a lot of energy, a lot of passion, an intense potential for creativity, for example. And then particularly at this time where we have this grand fixed square, it's adding to that intensity. So this is a week where it's a good idea to observe and respond to what's going on rather than try to instigate. It's people will be really reactionary. They'll be really reactive. And then we look again. So we're always questioning where is the other sort of coincidence of energy, and there we can see something quite interesting, luckily very positive as well, which is that it's Jupiter, which is sextile Uranus. So you might remember from the last time, for those of you who were there, Uranus and Saturn all last year, and to a certain degree all of this year as well, have been in a square. Last year it was much more intense. It was 3 specific times that it was in a square. And then we had we will have one more square in October, but we're still having this kind of movement between Uranus and Saturn. There's now an energy where Uranus becomes a bit stronger than Saturn. Even though Saturn is in very good dignity, Uranus is getting better support, let's say, because now Jupiter is highlighting Uranus, which represents innovation, change, advancement, something different, unexpected and also explosive. It can be something that causes a lot of chaos as well. So not necessarily, it's impossible to say what that looks like. Whereas, the status quo is represented more or less by Saturn, although it's also an agent for change, but it's change with a sense of a long-term goal or purpose. It's a steadfast, slow, developing transformation, as opposed to Uranus, which says, okay, this is it now. And now we have Uranus, which is sextiling in a very favorable, easy energy with Jupiter. Now, this can be, for example, the saving grace of what's going on in terms of the tensions around the globe at the moment, where a resolution appears. Now, if we just take the news from today, we see, for example, that on the level of male, female, masculine, feminine energy, tensions in relationships, intensity around relationship issues. Just before, later in the afternoon, I saw a headline that said that Prince Andrew, who had been sued by what's her name now, Victoria, or is it Virginia Giuffre, I think her name is. I may have her name wrong. She has claimed that she's been abused by Prince Andrew. She has a lot of evidence to demonstrate that. Was basically a sex slave for Jeffrey Epstein, and And so just now, this afternoon, her legal team and his legal team came to an agreement just 2 weeks before he was supposed to be, or even like 11 days before he was supposed to be called to testify and make a deposition, which is essentially testifying to the New York Supreme Court. And so this is something, or maybe it's the New York prosecution office, I can't remember the details, but anyway, he was going to have to testify in a way that would have been quite publicly damaging, not only to him, but obviously to the royal family of the United Kingdom. So now, boom, just at this moment, he's found a resolution by saying that he will pay her money, apparently a substantial amount of money, and pay it into her charity, which is to help victims of sex trafficking and prevent that from happening in the future. So very interesting development. I immediately thought, okay, this is Jupiter and Uranus coming up with a constructive solution, boom, like that, in a tense situation that we've been experiencing, that's been building up over the last few weeks. In the case of this particular case, that's also been years in the making. And she actually brought her case to in 2020. She brought her case against him, but it's been sort of shrouded or clouded over by the addition of the what's her name, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was also arrested. So he died in 2019 under mysterious circumstances, Jeffrey Epstein. And then they found her the following year in the spring. And so 2020 was when all of this started to take take on a momentum. So that, again, that Saturn-Pluto energy, especially Saturn-Pluto-Mars in March, energy has been a major trigger for a lot of things to be exposed, a lot of things to be challenging the received wisdom of what we think is actually the situation, or what we think is a stable situation. Something has been completely overthrown. The other element to this, of course, is that tension that is in the Donbas region of Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, and NATO and the United States, very powerfully chomping at the bit for war. That has shifted again, unusually, sort of surprisingly, although they say it was forecast to be this day, at least this period of time. The Russians have withdrawn the tanks and certain ground troops that were doing maneuvers in Belarus with the Belarusian army on the border with Russia and Ukraine. So again, there's a stepping back. There's something that's sudden, and it's a change, and it's somehow favorable and constructive. I think the other aspect to this, because we're talking about Jupiter after all, so it's going to be beneficial. It's going to be something that brings favor and benefit. And then one of the things that's just those two stories illustrate, maybe you can think of others, is that it saves face. It saves face. It's not necessarily a resolution to the situation. It's an unsatisfactory resolution to an unsatisfactory situation. But in that moment of change, it's graceful. And so this is the energy of Jupiter. Jupiter kind of saves the day here. So that's the good news. And so the other aspect of this this energy this weekend in general, for the full moon, I just want to come back to point out a couple of things, is that we now have exact on Sunday, which is the 28th. So it's not exactly today, but it's already very, very powerfully close, within like a couple of minutes of degree by the calculations. Pluto is coming up this week to the exact conjunction of Pluto in the United States natal chart. This is also significant because it's also this point of 27 degrees where the sun is today, on this full moon is the point where the United States moon is in its natal chart. It has the moon in Aquarius at 27 degrees. And so again, we have another message that is showing something is going to transform powerfully, deeply, with a deep disruption that has a lot to do with the public, the people, the sort of populace of the United States, because it involves the US moon, that this sun-moon opposition that we call the full moon is highlighting right now. And Pluto is all about transformation in a very profound way of, and in Capricorn particularly, of big business, banking, government, power players of all kinds. That Capricorn also represents things that are traditional, like family, family values, the roots of all traditions. And so Pluto entered into Capricorn at the end of 2008. That was just at the point of the, actually it first dipped in 2007, and then 2008 it went in to stay until now. Where we've had a lot of turmoil since then, and particularly 2008, 2009, where there was an enormous amount of financial disruption, markets crashing, a huge complication around the money markets, the banks, investment banks, and many thousands of families lost their pensions, they lost their savings, they lost their houses, and the banks were bailed out. They got money that the individual people who were actually cheated out of their money did not see. And so now we're back towards the end of that sign. Now we're seeing kind of a culmination in the next 2 years, the next year and a half for sure, of all of that. So we're coming to the end, which means that there's this kind of peak moment of energy as a planet, especially a slow-moving planet, moves towards the end of a sign. We start to see things really take shape in an accelerated way. Pluto is going to, of course, retrograde, so it goes away from that point, then it comes back to that point. So there's actually 3 direct, exact passes on the United States Pluto, but it is already in play. It already has been for the last 2 years. It's not new. This would have also already been a signature building up towards the US elections in 2020, for example, the presidential elections. So this has already been underway. It's not new, but it's now intensifying. And so it's really vital now that we pay attention to what's going on with what the Americans are trying to do on the global stage, with the way that they are trying to present certain things, with the way that they are trying to potentially distract or dominate based on an old playbook that now people are starting to notice. They see it now. They see what's going on. It's no coincidence that the 2 governments who are the most vocally in favor of really hard military action against Russia, because we can see that the European allies are not that convinced, especially Germany. The United States and Great Britain are the 2 powers that are the most vocally insightful around this whole military operation to block Russia in Ukraine. And both of those governments are in the middle of real crisis. They both have extremely low popularity ratings. They both have credibility issues. They both have a lot of fiscal and financial problems. So they have issues within within the heart of government itself, particularly in the UK. And it's very common knowledge that wars are often the politically expedient way out of a political crisis. And so this would, if I come back to my original point about where we do things for short-term selfish impulses without regard to the consequences on the greater good. So that Leo quality of what's good for me, what's in it for me, versus the Aquarian quality of what benefits all of us, what brings us all forward or connects us all together, is at play even in these national games, these national situations. So I'm going to just drop the moon for now, and I'm going to come to our current transits just to see, and we'll give it a day. No, that's not going to work. We'll give it a day so that we're starting from the point of this this moon. Where do we want to be? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing the wrong thing here. So we want to be at the rather the full moon, not the new moon. And I just want to change the time because I want it to be roughly around the correct time. So that should be 8:17:56. I'll just give it a few minutes here. Just so we start from basically this point so we can come back to it later. So, okay, here we are. Once again, we're back at that chart with the moon. And now what I'm going to do is move through the chart. And we're going to go day by day. And we're going to see how things are changing and moving in a new direction as we approach March. But already by the end of this week, things are becoming lighter and lighter day by day. So we have the sun as it leaves. So notice, by the way, before I continue day by day, I just want you to notice Venus and Mars are still conjunct. They've already been conjunct for a week or more. It's not been exact. So today, rather tomorrow, the full moon is the first exact conjunction, but that lasts a couple of days. And it also comes and goes because what's happening is actually since Venus normally is much faster than Mars, but since Venus was retrograde, and came out of her retrograde at the end of January, she's moving more slowly than normal. And so Mars was able to catch up to her. Now, I just want to come back to the point that I made about Venus and Mars meeting last summer already in July. That's really rare that now we're seeing this again after just 7 months, barely 6.5 months. Later, we're seeing Venus and Mars again conjuncting because normally that takes 2 years. So again, I want to reiterate that the Venus-Mars conjunction that we're experiencing right now, this week, and which will happen again in March, is a new cycle that you could consider to be a new cycle that is related to the economy, but that is also particularly related to relationships. And so wherever, particularly where Capricorn is for you in your natal chart, pay attention to that. And then shortly, when we get to March, you'll see that that's going to repeat itself in Aquarius. So again, just like with last month, pay attention to what's going on in the Capricorn and the Aquarius houses of your chart. These are areas where there's going to be immense growth, new cycles beginning in both areas. So we can say there's a new cycle in Capricorn triggering a 2-year relationship cycle or 2-year cycle around potentially money, or some kind of engagement in that regard. And the same thing in Aquarius. Again, this is going to happen at 0 Aquarius. You'll see it shortly. So just keep that in mind. Take a look at your own chart and see where that affects you. And consider that now what you're doing, the actions that you're taking and the ways that you're responding to what's going on are actually going to set something up of a new cycle. So we can start to look at issues around what it is that we want to let go of, and we'll get more into that when I get to this March period of time. So let's just watch as Venus and Mars are not going to leave each other's side basically for the next 2 weeks, and they will also even beyond that for the following week. So right up until about the third week of March, really up until the second or third week of March, Venus and Mars are very, very close together. So a month essentially where Venus and Mars are working together. So intensity around relationships, intensity around the economy, and so on. So just keep following if you can this area of the chart, just keep following. And that's where you'll see the Venus Mars, and then also this area of the chart, because now we've got the sun that on Friday mercifully moves into Pisces, a much more inspiring energy, much more joyful, much more abundant, much as set. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, where Jupiter happens to be at this moment until the middle of May. So the sun is also in a really glorious energy as it passes through Pisces from the 18th of February all the way until the 21st of March. And And so it's going to be a really positive energy, a positive shift, and can bring out a real sense of relief. And it will also help us to find inspiration, help us to find a sense of what is possible, in a way that I think has been really lacking in the last few years. So just keep watching those areas of the chart there, where we see Pisces, where we see Aquarius, where we see Capricorn. And so watch how Venus and Mars are now getting closer and closer and closer, until we see now at 27th of February, we're going to see the end of February. Oops. All right. Thanks, Teresa. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. So we're going to see now at the end of February is where we now start to see Venus, Mars, still conjunct, now approaching a conjunction with Pluto. Now things get intense. This is where we can start to learn things about, oh wait, we want to go back a day, because now we've got on the 2nd of March, we've got this new moon. That new moon is conjunct Jupiter. It's technically going to be at 12 degrees. So the moon just has to move into that, but I'm not going to change the time at this point. It'll just move into the sun in the evening of the 2nd of March. And we're at the same time, we've got Mercury and Saturn conjunct in Aquarius, which is extremely good for revealing information, for clarifying information, for understanding, being committed to change, being committed to a new goal, being committed to taking action, taking responsibility even around that area of life, and wherever Aquarius is for you. That can also be collectively as well, that there can be some sense of more concrete action or concrete understanding around communications, around information, and so on. But very importantly here, as we go towards the 3rd, and then even as far as the 5th, 6th, we're now going to see that we've still got this conjunction, that whole first week of March, where Venus and Mars and Pluto are all conjunct. The sun is also conjunct Jupiter, so it was a wide conjunction when Jupiter was conjunct the moon and the sun as the new moon, but now the sun and Jupiter are also conjunct on the 5th of March. So I think you'll find that by the 5th of March, 6th of March, let's say within the first week of March, you'll find that you will personally have a lot more information, a lot more sense of clarity of purpose, how to move forward as you want to do whatever it is that you want to engage with. Certainly issues that are dealing with shadow aspects of yourself or others in relationship should definitely be explored. Shadow aspects around money and finance, and that again applies collectively. And so I think there's going to be an enormous amount of revelation, understanding, something that we can start to work with, that we're at this stage not really yet ready to do, but the energy is already there to start in a new direction. It's just that we're not really 100% clear, but even still, even if you know where you want to go, at least at this point in these next say 48 hours, let's say that your motto is, I know this is an ending. I know that where I am, where I stand today is the end of something. I'm moving away from this, I'm changing this, and I'm also simultaneously beginning something new. So there's no void there. It's just, this is the ending. I'm done with that. I'm leaving it, and I'm committed now to the next thing. And so staying open these next 2 weeks, where the moon phase is closing out towards the new moon of the beginning of March, 2nd of March, then you stay open to what that next phase is going to look like, and how exactly you want to tweak that day by day, taking information, using it, taking action. Mars and Venus together is it's about inspired action. It's about being passionate about something. It's about putting a lot of effort into it, and especially by the first week of March, something very profound can emerge. And so I think this is a really great spring coming up. Before I leave this, I just want to make sure that I've actually spoken about all of the things that I wanted to tell you about. Right. In 2021, when Venus and Mars met in Leo, it was actually at 17 degrees. So it wasn't exactly the same degree point as what we're looking at now, but it is the same degree point in Capricorn. So Venus and Mars, when they conjunct on the new moon, if we go back here, but as they conjunct on the new moon, so that's actually the following day. Oops, they are going to be at 17 degrees. You see, so so that would create an inconjunct aspect, an awkward aspect. So there's something re-establishing itself compared to last summer with regards to relationships. Very, very unusual, this whole thing. So normally it's a 2-year cycle that we're getting 3 conjunctions within 7 months, which is pretty wild. I think that's pretty much it. Perhaps what I'll do is I'll leave the screen and see if you have any questions. Well, I just check again what my notes are. Yeah, and that just with regards to the nodes, because this is squaring the nodes. Remember, the sun and moon and the north and south nodes are squaring each other at their angles, and that creates a grand square. So there's an opposition and then 4 squares. These, if you think about the north node, for example, Pluto is actually trining the north node. So there's something very strongly activating. Pluto, again, is about revealing something, the shadow side of something. It's understanding deeper contexts, the capacity for regeneration, rebirth, understanding aspects of the shadow side of life, of us, of our mind, as well as society. And so it's very much giving us this kind of insight towards a kind of a future. Where do we want to move towards with this understanding? Because the understanding is the important part. It's understanding, revealing something. It's like, oh, that, oh, this, oh, right, that's the thing. If I use the example again from the collective point of view of whether it be understanding Prince Andrew and this whole issue around Jeffrey Epstein and sex trafficking and so on, or if it's understanding Russia and NATO and US tensions, you know, we've got a greater understanding. We can see more clearly what's actually coming up. And then for the south node, Ketu, which is in Scorpio, that's really what south node is, what we let go of. It's something that we're trying to it's either taken away from us, or we're trying to let go of it, or we will let go of it. And so this is very much about, because it's in Scorpios for 1.5 years, of course, it's a lot around fear. Scorpio is about fears. It's about the underbelly of stuff. It's about the kind of hidden aspects, the sort of taboo aspects of things. So again, this trining now, so it's actually a sextile, still a positive aspect with Pluto. Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio as well, so empowering that energy as well. So definitely something to think about in terms of what ideas and patterns of behavior, potentially sort of shadow aspects of yourself might be, you know, dredged up with this Pluto sextiling. Okay, thanks, Catherine. Good that you could come. We're almost finished. So if there are any questions, I think that's everything I wanted to say. Yes, it is Virginia Giuffre. I wrote her name down here just to be sure of the name. Oh, by the way, just for those of you who are still listening, 17th of February, which is Thursday, actually on that day, that is going to trigger, the planetary movements are going to trigger the November 19th eclipse. So if you go back in time, November 19th of 2021, what was shifting for you, what was changing in your life, that is exactly where these nodes are again. So it's still Taurus and Scorpio. That was already relevant, although the nodes themselves technically were still in the Gemini Sagittarius axis. But look for clues this week as to what is highlighted, what is changing, what is responding to what started at that eclipse, you will probably see some sort of manifestation around that, what that means for you. So you'll get more of a sense of what that eclipse meant for you. This is, of course, going to be more important for people who have particularly, important placements around that. Again, that magic sort of 27-degree point, because that's where that was, where the sun and the moon were at the full moon at 27 degrees of Taurus Scorpio. And the nodes were just at the very end of Jupiter, of Sagittarius and Gemini. So I think I've said it all. So let's see if there's any questions. And look at that, we're almost exactly on time. So I don't know if you have any other stories that you can think of in the news in general, in society, which refer to this kind of tension, this Venus-Mars tension, this aspect which implies, this kind of underbelly and this kind of hidden aspect, which Pluto dredges up, this kind of ugly side of things, hidden, or power plays. It's also power games. It's power over people. The moon's nakshatra, the nakshatra is a lunar mansion, and it's in Magha nakshatra, and that's ruled by Ketu. So it's already an energy of power. It's about power. It's very much an energy of letting go, of dropping things off, and it can be very impulsive energy as well. So that's again what I was saying earlier about better to, rather than trying to take or instigate action, it's better to react or respond to what's going on and keep a low profile, take lots of notes, observe what's going on, and of course take action when it's appropriate for you, but just beware that people are going to be highly emotional. Anyway, Leo is an emotional energy. It's all about the heart again, so all about our emotional nature. And potentially also not seeing, the greater good, seeing more its own will.
Maybe I can ask.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
I was just going to maybe ask a question because, and I suppose it's in a way general for any of the full moons. But so if this is a full moon in Leo, and the axis is very much around Taurus and Scorpio, and so just how much does it matter that right now is Aquarius season, and so like the themes, it's kind of thinking of it's sort of fire and water, kind of the two signs, are they sort of canceling each other out, or is it just that maybe Aquarius has a different role in this whole discussion?
No, let me show you again, because I think maybe there's a misunderstanding. So first of all, Aquarius is not a water sign. Aquarius is an air sign.
Yeah, correct.
So the fact that aqua is in the name is only coincidence. That is the water bearer is the meaning of Aquarius. So it's actually a water, an air sign. And so the sun is in Aquarius. So when the sun is in Aquarius and the moon is in Leo, we get a full moon in Leo. So we're always looking to where the moon is to see where the full moon is. But we require the sun in opposition to have a full moon. So by definition, we've got now fire and air, the axis of Leo and Aquarius. So for example, next month, we're going to have the moon in Pisces. It's going to be a full moon. The sun is going to be in Pisces, and it's going to be a full moon in the opposite sign of Virgo, and so on and so on. Okay, so that's the one aspect, and then we have the other aspect, which is the nodes, and the nodes themselves are not directly impacting the sun and the moon until they get to that point. So the nodes are what cause the eclipses. The nodes are a mathematical point. Actually, it's the point at which the sun and the moon cross paths that cause eclipses. So let's go to the first eclipse, which is going to be on the 30th of April. So I'm just now going to switch over to days. So just to show you, here we go. There's the sun. Now the sun and the moon it's in a new moon configuration. It's on the 30th of April over here, and it's in Taurus. And that's going to be conjunct. That's going to be a doozy. It's going to be conjunct Uranus, and then so anything with up to 15 to 18 degrees of difference is going to cause an eclipse. So the closer to this is the degree point that we're looking at here. The closer it is, the stronger the eclipse. So this is considered a partial eclipse, and it's a new moon. So that's going to be a solar eclipse. So we have 12 degree difference basically, and with Uranus in the mix. So that's going to be very interesting times. That's going to be something to do again with money, these issues, because we're talking about Taurus. So Taurus is really being highlighted for the next year and a half, particularly everything around food, nature, the environment, money, banking systems, our stuff, all of our stuff, and also supply chains and all of that kind of thing. That's very, very much in question. So that's where we got this grand square that I was implying. So we've got on one side we've got Taurus and Scorpio, and then on the other side we've got Leo and Aquarius, all four of which are in the fixed mode. So we have a cardinal mode, which is where the seasons begin. It's initiating energy. It's dynamic, and that's like the Aries and Cancer and Libra and Capricorn. They start the seasons. Everything starts with that cardinal energy, and then you have the fixed energy right afterwards, and then you have the mutable energy, which is just before the next seasonal change. And so each of those three groups are also something that we look at. And for example, if we're looking at an individual's chart, we want to see what's the nature of the individual. Do they have a combination of those energies, or do they have more kind of a dense amount of that energy? For example, I have a lot of mutable energy, but I also have cardinal points in my chart. So it's that combination, but I have nothing. Well, actually, no, I have one thing fixed. My Venus is in Aquarius. So, right. Does that make that clear for you now?
Yes, I realized my question was pretty confusing. So thank you for clarifying it.
Okay.
All.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. Anything else? All right. I think we're done. Thank you for being here. Nice to chat with you. And to those of you on the recording, thanks for being here too. So see you all again soon. Bye, and good luck with all of this. Do tell me your stories. Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening. Thanks so much.